Many people believe that eating a lot of fat leads to weight gain, but this is not the case. In fact, the reason we accumulate fat is not because of fat, but because of insulin. Insulin is a hormone that stores fat, not fat on its own. When we eat fat, we burn it, and when we eat carbohydrates, blood sugar levels rise. Since the body cannot maintain a constantly high blood sugar level, it begins to accumulate it, part in the form of carbohydrates and the rest in the form of fat. It is insulin stimulated by carbohydrates, not fat, that leads to fat accumulation. Another myth. Many people believe that eating a lot of fat leads to fatigue. This is also incorrect. Fatigue does not arise from fat, but from the fact that we simply overeat, whether it's fat, protein or carbohydrates. Another common myth. It is often said that fatigue after a heavy meal, for example on Thanksgiving, is caused by turkey, which contains tryptophan. It is assumed that tryptophan in the body is converted into melatonin, a sleep hormone. But in fact, this is not the case. Fatigue after a hearty meal is not caused by tryptophan, but simply overeating. Fatigue after a hearty meal, especially one rich in carbohydrates and fats, is not a myth. It occurs due to a sharp jump in blood sugar and insulin levels. When insulin is elevated and cells become resistant to it, the body is forced to look for another way to get rid of excess sugar. It turns into triglycerides, that is, fats in the blood. Such a load on the body requires significant energy costs for the digestion of food and for the processing of glucose into triglycerides. This is what leads to a feeling of fatigue. It is important to understand that the problem is not in fats or in a particular dish, but in the amount of food and in the high content of carbohydrates in it. The higher the insulin resistance, the more pronounced this problem is. Moreover, even without an abundant feast, just from a large amount of food, you may feel tired. It is a common misconception that it is fats that are harmful to the heart. But this is not the case. Heart disease is caused not by fats, but by carbohydrates and insulin resistance, which occurs due to prolonged carbohydrate intake. The combination of carbohydrates and fats is a really bad combination. Carbohydrates stimulate the production of insulin, which stores excess, and fats, in turn, enhance this process. The quality of the fats consumed also matters. Not all fats are harmful, namely processed vegetable oils, which are not obtained from vegetables, but are made using chemical processes. Stable fats, such as monounsaturated in olive oil and saturated in animal fats, if consumed in an unspoiled form, are not dangerous to health. The best way to reduce insulin resistance is to reduce carbohydrate intake and increase the amount of healthy fats. Severe liver pain, especially on the right side, can be a sign of gallbladder problems. This is due to the fact that the gallbladder is located under the liver on the right side. The pain syndrome can spread throughout the body, covering the neck, shoulders, interscapular space and the upper part of the trapezius muscle. Eating excessive amounts of fat primarily affects the gallbladder, since it is responsible for the processing of fats. One of the first signs of overeating fatty foods is diarrhea. This is because if you have problems with the gallbladder, it may not produce enough bile to break down fats. Bile acts as a detergent, breaking down fat particles into smaller ones, which allows the body to digest them. With insufficient bile production, the body cannot effectively break down fat, which leads to diarrhea. Another sign that you are eating too much fat is a floating stool. This is due to the fact that unprocessed fat, not broken down by bile, is lighter than water and remains undigested. Another problem that occurs when overeating fats can be belching and bloating. This is due to the fact that unprocessed fat particles are not broken down properly and create digestive problems. Finally, pain in the gallbladder area, on the right side, under the liver, can also be a sign that you are eating too much fat. This is due to the fact that the gallbladder overflows with a thick liquid, which causes pain. Problems with the gallbladder, such as the formation of stones, can cause serious discomfort. In some cases, when the pain becomes unbearable and is accompanied by vomiting, surgical intervention may be required. Cystectomy, that is, removal of the gallbladder. However, before resorting to surgery, there are alternative treatments such as fasting or a special diet. Fasting, whether intermittent or prolonged, can give the gallbladder rest and cleanse itself. Special supplements can help break down stones and relieve pressure on the gallbladder. An important point is that in case of problems with the gallbladder, it is important to limit fat intake. Many people are aware of the keto diet, which allows you to burn fat by reducing your carbohydrate intake. It is important to understand that it is not about eating more fat, but about limiting carbohydrate intake and giving the body the opportunity to switch to ketosis mode when it starts using fat as an energy source. The ketogenic diet is a variant of a diet with a very low carbohydrate content, high fat content and moderate protein content. The amount of carbohydrates, as a rule, does not exceed 20-50 grams per day. It is necessary to monitor your diet in order to provide the body with enough calories and maintain ketosis. This diet is rich in fats, 79%, low in carbohydrates, 5%, and contains a moderate amount of protein, 16%. This diet triggers the ketosis process, forcing the body to use fat as the main source of energy. At first, over the course of a few days or a week, you will gain weight while your body adapts to the new regime. The key point is to teach the body to get energy from fats. At the initial stage, despite ketosis, the body may not have time to burn all incoming fat. This is due to the fact that ketosis can be caused not only by fat burning, but also simply by a large amount of fat in the diet. Such a diet has a number of side effects due to the formation of toxic substances such as ketone bodies. These include dehydration, manifested by dry mouth, headache, dizziness, decreased blood pressure, visual impairment, electrolyte imbalance, primarily associated with a decrease in sodium and magnesium in the blood, symptoms of which may include muscle cramps, sleep problems and irritability, especially at the beginning of a diet, decreased blood sugar, bad breath, pronounced lethargy and drowsiness. Gastrointestinal disorders, including nausea, vomiting, diarrhea or constipation, exacerbation or occurrence of gastroesophageal reflux disease, acid from the stomach into the esophagus, increased uric acid levels in the blood and exacerbation of gout, protein deficiency in the patient, decreased bone density, formation of kidney stones and gallbladder, hair loss. In order for the body to start burning its own reserves effectively, it is necessary to gradually reduce fat intake. Carbohydrates and proteins in the diet remain unchanged. Let's say you reduce your fat intake by 100 grams, from 220 to 120 grams. The percentage of macronutrients changes. Carbohydrates 8%, proteins 25%, fats 68%. At the same time, the total calorie intake is reduced from 2500 to 1600. It is important that even with such a reduction in calories, the body adapted to ketosis continues to burn about 2500 calories, including from its own fat reserves. Thus, a calorie deficit is created, stimulating fat burning. Remember, these figures are examples that can be adjusted depending on individual indicators. Don't starve yourself. The goal is to help the body use its own reserves.